hour of politics. Welcome and welcome. This is what we have for you. A few weeks ago now, Mr. Ellis Chuchu Jones went after the Unity Party and the CPP in a very ruthless manner. He attacked the UP and the CPP has been no different from what we have today. That those two institutions are as corrupt as anybody can imagine. He did not miss his words when he condemned the UP and the CPP are being business as usual and they don't have any alternative for the Liberian people. Mr. George Lobbo was not satisfied with the wild accusations leveled against the UP, his party, and the CPP, an institution he also belongs to. And so Mr. Lobbo is here. But before we can go into that, we will give Mr. George Lobbo the opportunity to respond to prevailing circumstances happening in our country regarding the deaths of the four auditors. George will be giving about 2 minutes to respond to that and assure the Liberian people uh, about what's happening in the country and that maybe it will get well, but George knows what to say. So, Mr. Lobo, without much ado, uh, welcome again. And the deaths of the auditors, the news has gone to the international wires. We heard about group that defend auditors worldwide writing letters to the U.S. government asking for their intervention. This matter is serious. And then we hearing family members of the auditors are not in agreement with the government proceeding with autopsy. What is going on here, George? Please share with our people what your take is.
First and foremost, Anthony, I want to say once again to our viewers, Liberians across the globe, I want to say thank you for being here. These are concerning issues in our country. To have four Liberians professional murder in such a mysterious faction, and as we speak, there have been no concrete, honest, transparent commitment from our government to investigate the murder of our four Liberians. These are people, relatives. I also want to take this time, first and foremost, to extend my heartfelt condolences to the family of those four people who've lost their loved ones. Anthony, it is very, very clear. The Liberian government, under the leadership of Ambassador George Weah, has shown to the Liberian people that it does not have the integrity, the credibility to conduct an independent investigation. And as a matter of fact, we know an investigation should have been ongoing. Mr. Steer, when you have the president, the chief executive officer of the republic, the man who is in charge of the second branch of government, which is responsible for enforcing the law, giving his constitutional function. When you have the president shows up at the church have become the president's most comfortable place to address the nation. And so when he shows up to his church and begin to make statements that undermine and compromises the integrity of the investigation, these are very alarming times in our country. To have the president at his church say that it was a boyfriend and girlfriend. Now, the day before yesterday, we heard the Minister of Information, Ledger Hureni, who even discredited the profession of those four auditors. He doubted that they were even auditors, which I think was not only pathetic, it was irresponsible, very childish, and unprofessional, and very unethical for such a thing to happen. You have four Liberians that have died in such a mysterious faction. To have the government spokesman to discredit what they've done for the republic, I think that is bad. So these are the concerns Liberians have. If the government cannot protect her own people who work for them, and when something happens, the government cannot be truthful about what happens to them, what happens to the common man who is not part of the government? So, Anthony, these are very difficult time in our country history. And I want to call on all well-meaning Liberians to continue to push and demand the intervention of our international partners so that justice can be served and we can have some type of closure. That is my position on that.
And George, recent development filtering in, and I know you have not had the opportunity to look up this story, but I read it. Uh, Student activist Martin Colley is now being asked by the court. There's a writ of arrest against him because somebody who Martin, according to the report, accused of being responsible for the deaths of, some of the auditors, filed a case with the court, and the court has issued a writ of arrest for Martin Colley. So, what is going on here? I know you have not had the opportunity to read this story, but that is what's obtaining right now.
First and foremost, Anthony, again, I want to be very clear. I think it's a sad one, but I will say this to all of us, those of us who are in the habit of disseminating information, whether being a talk show host, being a journalist, or whatever profession we take. I think we have a commitment and a moral obligation and responsibility that comes with the job we pick. Having said that, I have not read the details of the complaint. I have no knowledge of what the case is about. But let me be very, very clear. Martin Colley, if it is true, given what you are saying, that he has been sued, I think for me, I'm one of those guys who believe in the rule of law, who believes that everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond all reasonable doubt. Now, does that mean that under the George Weah government, is there a possibility for there to be a truthful, fair, uncompromised trial? That is yet to be seen. So the government needs to understand it. You can't have your cake and don't want to eat it. If you want to bring people to books and hold them liable for what they say, then I think the government must also facilitate the creation of an independent judiciary system which work for all, not work for few people from the poor government. On the basis of that, can we say Martin Colley will get a fair trial in the court of Liberia today? No, given the fact that what we know, the Liberian government, the judiciary system have been compromised. We know what happened. We know what happened to the unjustifiable removal of Justice Jani. When the judiciary branch of government that is in charge to interpret the law misinterpret the law to favor the executive, that itself, I don't know what happens to the common man if a justice was impinged by compromising the courts. Martin Colley is just an ordinary Liberian man, a youth, and an advocate. I don't know his guarantee for a safe and fair trial in the court systems in our country today does not seem to exist. But like I said, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, you just brought it to my attention. I'm going to look into it more. But I presume everyone innocent until proven guilty. So that is my take. I hope, and I want to be very clear, I hope government will not be using its supporters, its propagandists, to use these means, using the code that belongs now, that is in the pocket of the executive, to go after advocate on the basis of character assassination. And that is something that we need to be careful about. Because let me say this to you, Anthony. Today could be Martin Colley. Tomorrow could be you, or day after tomorrow could be myself, George Lobbo. So I'm not going to sit there and ignore what the government have been doing in the past. We know the government history, so we are not stranger to the government's performance. But at the end of the day, like I've said, we will wait and see what the facts are, and then we'll proceed from there. And I won't speculate on that.
Thank you, George. But finally, on this investigation that being reported and being talked about, one of the key things here is that the government of Liberia has asked the U.S. government to intervene to help with the investigation. But up to press time, we are yet to receive any communication from the Liberian government officially inviting the Americans for help. Is this something that you think is troubling? Because if you want this help very serious, there should be a communication to that effect. We have not seen that. Why?
Anthony, there's a difference between investigating and pretending to be investigating. We know the Liberian government have the history of pretending to be investigating, not investigating. If the government believed that she was calling on the international community, especially one of her fundamental and traditional allies, which happens to be the United States, to assist her in the investigation of the mysterious death of the four auditors, I think what is prudent to have been done is the fact that the government should understand that it is an institution. People just don't communicate because the president is staying in his church and makes statements. People can't tell whether the president is addressing the nation or the president is preaching to his congregation. And so those statements don't go anywhere. President Weah needs to understand we live in the 21st century world. This is not just you talking to partisans at the headquarters. If you want to request a favor from another country, this is an international engagement. There must be a formal communication addressed to the US government through its embassy in Liberia. And as far as I'm concerned, Anthony, that is yet to have been done. And until that can be done, I don't take the government to be serious on any of its statements it make. This government have shown no desire and no willingness to be credible. So I don't trust the government.
But Josh, why if the government did send that communication, except that they have not shown it to the Liberian people or released it to the public?
Anthony, I want to be very, very clear here with you. I can't speculate, but here's what I would say. If the government sent a formal communication, I think it would have been prudent enough to have the Minister of Information announce it to the people, say he had all the time to tell us that the four auditors who died, they were not auditors. But he refused to tell us what they were doing, what were their profession, what capacity were they serving in. And I think, Mr. C, this is something that could have calmed every Liberian that is raising concern about these questions. If it is indeed true, the government have communicated with the US government, I think that would have been something to bring to the public attention so that the public could have at least say, okay, we now will be hoping to see what comes out of it. Until that is done, we all will continue to speculate and remain knowing what the government is capable of doing. We do not trust the government. That's my position.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lobbo. Again, folks, in cyberspace, you are watching Focus on Liberia. This is our program, The Hour of Politics, with me, Anthony C., your host. The program comes on every Tuesday here at Focus on Liberia. In today's business, Mr. Josh Lobbo is here to respond to a huge criticism that came from Mr. Ellis Tutu Jones, accusing the Unity Party government of being corrupt more than any other in the Republic of Liberia, and that the CPP does not offer any hope for Liberia. And Mr. Josh Lobbo, we reached out to him and he agreed to come and respond. And so he's yet to set the record straight. So, Mr. Lobbo, let's get started with the main business for which we are here. Like I said, Chuchu Jones came here swinging, ripping the Unity Party government as well as the CPP. But let's start with Unity Party. What's your response to all the allegations that Alice Chuchu Jones made against your party, you having to be the vice chairman for administration for Unity Party USA and Canada? Your response.
Point of correction, I am the vice chair for operation.
For operation.
Unity Party USA. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me say one thing to you today, Mr. C. We are where we are today because folks like Alex Jones and many other educated Liberians got us in these positions. What do I mean by that? It was easy in 2017 to tell the Liberian people that the Unity Party did nothing. They thought they were doing it to harm the Unity Party. Instead, they hurt the country most. Mr. C, I can't relitigate what happened in 2017. The Liberian will understand, and they have made it very clear. This is why, Mr. C, in 4 months into the President Weah's administration, we saw the creation of a new song that this kind of hardship we never saw it in time. This kind of stealing we never saw it in time. That is a very clear indication of what the people were feeling. So I can't get into, Mr. Jones's feelings. But here are the basic facts, Mr. C. Every Liberian, whether you like the UP or not, you must be real to yourself and to your country. You need to go back and look at the country the Unity Party inherited in 2005. What was Liberia like? Liberia was referred to as a failed state. A failed state. A country with a $4.5 billion debt on its head. A country with all its infrastructure destroyed. With all its institutions dead. That is what we took over. With all its major roads crumbling. I know what the road from Ganta to Monrovia used to look like, for example. I traveled from Ganta to Sekle, PA. I traveled from Ganta all the way to Bozu, passing through Yekepa. So we can go on and on naming, but I just wanted to make sure that we set the record straight here today. The Unity Party inherited a country with a national reserve of $6.5 million. That is what we took over. Without a functioning army, with a biased police force, one we had to restructure, the AFL which we restructure and begin to participate in international peacekeeping operations. Not only that, we instituted massive fiscal and monetary policy reforms, which led to Liberia securing a $4.5 billion debt waiver. Many Liberians might not know through the HIPIC initiative. Let me tell you, there was Sierra Leone, Cameroon, and other African countries that were already in the program prior to Liberia entering the program. We beat out Cameroon, beat out Sierra Leone, and we qualified and succeeded in securing that debt waiver. Now, not only that, Mr. C, when we came to power, what was a registered nurse making in the Republic of Liberia in 2006? $15. What was a medical doctor making? $150. What was a teacher making? The least civil servant in the Republic of Liberia made $800. So sometimes when people speaking, take your emotions out of it. Address the issues based on fact. Now, let me tell Mr. Jones what we left in 2017. In 2018, January 22nd, when we gave the country to the CDC. So he will understand when he say we are the same. When we took over, the National Reserve was 6.5 million. When we gave Liberia to George Weah on January 22nd, we gave George Weah Liberia with a $154.8 million reserve in a national reserve. Not only that, we gave George Weah a Liberia with a total international debt amounting to $887 million. Now, do you want us to list the programs and projects we undertook? Not only that, when we gave Liberia to George Weah, we had paved, reconstructed 700 kilometers of road, largest that ever since independence. No government, no party, I challenge any Liberian. Name one party with more accomplishment than what the UP accomplished in 12 years. Not wanted to do, was going to do, thinking about doing, was about to do, but on the basis of the facts, what we started and completed. That let's proceed. We gave George Weah an international terminal at the Roberts International Airport. Not only that, we paved the entire runway, something that have never happened over some 40, 50 years ago. We left for Liberia a ministerial complex at the cost of $60 million. What did we do in 2015? We managed to qualify Liberia for the MCC Compact Grant. We secured $257 million from the US government. That money was supposed to go towards the energy sector, towards the water sector, sanitation, and different programs. Today, when people see the pipes in Monrovia from the water plane, that project is from the compact initiative that we qualify for. So when people want to make comparison with the Unity Party government, put your emotions out. Tell me what you gave us and what we left. That is how you make comparison when you want to analyze government. When we came to power, the least civil servant before we left power was making over $100. Today, a registered nurse was making $250 with $14,000, depending on your location. A medical doctor made over $1,050. Not only that, don't quote me, quote Dr. Tobo Nyeswa, who is one of Liberia's finest medical practitioners. He said he joined the healthcare system in 1999. And in 2006, when the Unity Party government came up, access to healthcare, primary healthcare in the Republic was at 40%. By the time in 2018, it was up to 80%. Not only that, Mr. C, the Unity Party government renovated over 200 and completed the construction of many new public schools. We built hospitals in counties that never had hospitals. So this comparison, I don't know if it is based on emotion or sentiments, but let the conversation be based on substance and on the facts. And I challenge any Liberian any day. Tell Mr. Jones, I'll take that debate any day on this platform for us to appear and make that case. I will win it any day.
All right, Mr. Josh Lobbo there with a firing response to the wild criticism and accusations that came from Mr. Alex Tutu Jones. And Alex Tutu Jones, you got mail from Josh Lobbo, and he is challenging you to a debate and focus on Liberia. As you know, is always ready. We are the best in Liberia in terms of hosting debate. And so, folks, we will let you know when that debate is scheduled. But Mr. Lobo, you have given your response. And my job here is to make sure that all of the things that you said, uh, are in keeping with the facts. You are the man of facts. You always tell us that, look, let's talk facts, facts, facts. So let's see if we can go into some specifics. What we're going to do now is to look at Unity Party. I want to know, my first question, what is the Unity Party? What I mean is that what all make the Unity Party?
Right now, if you're looking at the makeup of the Unity Party, as you know, in 2011, the Unity Party formed a merger with the Liberian Action Party, the Liberian Unification Party, and another party. So
Mhm.
it's a conglomeration of other parties which came together. But overall, the Unity Party is a political party in the history of Liberia.
Mhm.
It's a very long existing party which have contested many elections, and we are right now a member of the CPP. We just a regular political party like the True Party, the NPP, any other party in Liberia.
So, in terms of governance, the Unity Party, I want to believe you will agree, had representation in the national legislature during your 12 years of rule. Do you want to say here that the representation by Unity Party at the legislature was good or bad? What is your assessment of Unity Party lawmakers' performance during the 12 years rule?
During the 12 years, we must not forget Anthony. Uh, in terms of the legislature, we can begin with 2006. I was in the Liberian legislature that day when Azen Yinabo was elected Senate Pro Tempore. He was not from the Unity Party.
Mhm.
I was there when Edwin Melvin Snow was elected Speaker. He was not from the Unity Party.
Mhm.
So that means in 2006, the first branch of government was not headed by the ruling party.
Okay.
That's the first place.
Mhm.
And so, in terms of representation, the Unity Party over the years have been fortunate to have had majority, sometimes minority, but have always been fortunate to have had enough of representation. In terms of what the performance is, that we have to look at the legislature as a whole. Because, for example, in the Senate, you need 17 to constitute a majority. The Unity Party might have had 8 or 7 senators. That does not constitute a majority. Now we can go to the lower house. What happens is the reason why it's hard to give you a hard count of how many lawmakers we have, Anthony. We've seen in Liberian politics where people get elected on party platform, they go to the Capitol building. For whatever reason best known to themselves, they switch and join other party. So I won't be able to definitively sit here today and tell you, say, oh no, this is our representation. But overall, let me say this very clear. During the 12 years of the Unity Party government, what Liberia enjoyed, the stability in terms of foreign direct investment, in terms of a good, conducive climatic
George,
condition for businesses to
we'll
come.
get to
No,
concession and
let me
investment, but
finish. So
I want us to
I'm
talk
just saying.
about the representation that representatives and senators of the Unity Party provided for their constituents in Liberia. How will you
I,
rate their
I
performance
will
in?
say they did the best. They did a very good job. I'll give you an example. Let me give you an example. Uh, it was true the Unity Party 12 years that for the first time in our country history that a law
George, for the
was
record, did you
enacted.
say the Unity Party representatives in the House of Senate and representative did a very good job throughout the time Unity Party was in
No, no,
power?
no, no. Listen, actually, you cannot use a statement like that because here's what
I'm
happens.
asking a question.
No, but let me answer. I have to answer you the question the best way possible I can because you know what? This is not a yes or no question. And you have to understand there were times where there were votes taken that I personally didn't like. So what does that mean? There were other concession agreements that they voted for that I didn't like. There were other bills that they brought for that I didn't like. There was some I didn't like. So it is hard for you to sit down and just say definitively everything they did was rosy. That would be unprofessional for me to do that. But what I can point to, we can discuss the specifics. So I think the best way for us to word the question is to get to those specifics in terms of representation, in terms of oversight, in terms of lawmaking. So
All
if we
right, then let's
discuss
get
those
to
specifics,
specific,
that'll be
George.
great.
Then let's get to
Great.
specifics. Let's
That's what
get
I
to
would like.
specific and let's do this if you don't mind. Let me give you two of your senators that served during the time the Unity Party was in power. Vani Shema and Meton Tiaje. Let's just use those two and see how Unity Party lawmakers perform in the national legislature. Are you proud of Vani Shemon representation in the Senate? Are you proud of Meton Tiaje representation in the Senate?
You have to look at a couple of things. The two senators we are talking about, they are currently in the legislature. Currently, they are senators right now. So if we want to say, are you talking about before 2017 or are you talking about their overall performance as senators?
From the time they started representing Unity Party in the legislature today, they are still Unity Party
Okay, no, I will tell you,
senators. So tell
no,
me,
let me
are
see.
you proud of what they've been able to
No,
do in terms of representation?
no, no, I
And
won't
why?
say
Why are
that.
you not proud of that?
Because let me be very clear with you. I have been on the records.
Mhm.
We expect opposition lawmakers in Capitol building or in Congress to be a representation of what the party stands for. Over the past couple of years, we've seen the legislative branch of government in bed with the executive. We have not seen no exercise of oversight responsibility. From a representative perspective, like you said, these lawmakers, we've seen budgets that have been passed
Mhm.
have not benefited the interests of our people, and they have voted for it. And I've been on the record for calling them out on some of those things. So I'm not satisfied. I can't be proud of what they've done. No, I won't say that because, for example, I was disappointed when lawmakers approved the Ito and Igbo loan, for example,
Mhm.
which was still being ratified, which I thought was one of the greatest mistakes made by our legislature. Not only that, the stimulus, which was one of the most recent ones. President George Weah have gotten all his appointees through without any kind of scrutiny. So I have always been against that. So I'm not going to say I'm proud of that. No, that's not something I'm proud of. No.
So, Joe, if you are not proud of that, is it fair to say that the Unity Party, in terms of legislative representation, failed the Liberian people?
I would say no, because if you say feel the Liberian people, then you have to understand though. There are 8 lawmakers in the Senate. Does that constitute the majority? That's one thing you must look at. You can't get nothing done. If I use your analogy, should we agree that Darius Dillon failed the Liberian people? If we use your analogy, is that a fair analogy to use? Because you can't.
George. So,
I'm just asking.
and George will
I'm
come to the
using your
issue.
analogy. So if you want me to say they failed, using your analogy, knowing that
George,
17
I will
constitutes
argue that they have failed. And let me give you some reasons why.
go for it.
And I'm glad that you say you are not proud of the representation that they have made on behalf of the Unity Party in the national legislature. Now, I don't have the specifics regarding corruption allegation against Vani Sherman, but I can tell you that Meton Tiaje, who happened to be a senator for Unity Party, gave Nambodiki. Meton Tiaje is on record for telling nominee that they have to take people that he's sending to them before he can confirm them. He said it's the order of the day. This is a Unity Party senator. And we're just using 2 years as a case study to see how Unity Party did in terms of legislative representation.
Yeah, but let
I
me
would
let me
say they
hold you
are
there
a
now.
failure.
Let me hold you there now. Let me
Mm-hmm.
hold you there now. So if you want to, if you use the word unity party, right? Barney Sherman have been a senator not only for the last 2 years.
Right.
Now, is it also fair to say the Unity Party government in the 12 years ratified the loan agreement for over $874 million? Some of those loans went towards money that resulted to the reconstruction of the hydro. Was that a failure of the Unity Party? Some of the money, like the $60 million loan we took from the Bank of China, which led to the construction of the new international airport, the new terminal at the RIA, and the pavement of the road. Was that a bad representation of the Unity Party government? Can we say that? Some of the bill, the law that created the Assistant Superintendent for Fiscal Affairs, the law which created the county development fund, which money was moved directly towards county for an all-inclusive government. So sometimes, yes, how we need to do it.
So,
The reason
George,
why
you want us to give Unity Party credit, but
no, no,
earlier
no,
you
no. That's
said that they were not in majority at some point. So you cannot look at the minority then and then say they are responsible for the
No,
failure.
no, but no, you are blaming the entire party. You are not speaking of two people.
No,
That's what I'm trying to make to
initially
you.
I said to you,
So
let's look at Unity Party in
no,
terms
no.
of legislative
So that's what I'm
representation.
saying. If you say, Anthony, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
When you say the Unity Party failed, I am stating the Unity Party's accomplishment as a party.
Mm-hmm.
When you say Milton Teje failed, we can discuss Milton Teje and his specifics.
Mm-hmm.
But when you label the party, then it is my obligation as a member of the party
but
to
they are
state
your
the party's.
representative, and you will not even tell me which one of your representatives, both representatives and senators, who have done well. Can you boast of any one of them?
When you say in terms of doing well, let me say this to you.
Mm-hmm.
When you say in terms of doing well, should we allocate projects, developmental projects and programs that went to the county as part of the lawmaker or representation from those counties? If we were to do that,
just let come to a concession. Because of time.
Oh, no, no. So but let's get this fight fair, then we can get to where it is.
Okay.
So is it fair? Because let me give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Fowler, who is running today to be senator,
right.
One of his major accomplishments he's running on
mm-hmm.
was the 72nd row and the police academy row, which was constructed during the Unity Party's government.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is how it would discuss representation, the argument that is being made now is that Thomas Fowler represented the people of District Number 5 very well, that he worked with the Unity Party government and development came to his county. So should we look, for example, in Nimba where a $10 million hospital was constructed? Should we say that was a failure? Should we look at Grand Bass or should we look at Lofa where there's a hydro? Should we look at the pavement in Vonjama? So my statement to you, Mr. C, is that we have not been satisfied with everything our lawmakers have done. But when you attack the party based on accomplishment, it is my obligation to set the record straight. And that is what I'm saying. So you can talk about the specific pertaining to a lawmaker and we'll discuss that. So if you want to go to
my belief is that Unity Party, in terms of legislative representation in the House of Legislature, you said you are not proud of what they did.
No.
And so absolutely. I am telling you, in my judgment, they failed us. And yet a few reasons. You talk about the Igbo mouth and the Eton. They signed on it, all right? And let's come to the concessions agreement. Reports highlight that of the around 67 concessions agreements that were passed during the Unity Party ruled, about 60 of them were bookers and did not meet international standards. Where do you stand on that?
You know, let me be very clear with you. Mm-hmm. Very clear with you. Concession agreements were signed. There was a firm from the UK. It's one firm,
right,
which did an analysis, an opinion analysis, and turned those concession bookers. So you run with it. Now that is fine, but let's look at the basics of some of those concession agreements. Okay. Let's just look at the basics, the hardcore facts.
Right.
We were a country emerging from a 14 years of devastation, civil war. We needed to create employment. Liberia had a $4.5 billion debt on its head. We had to secure concession agreements to be able to bring investors to our country. Not only that, Anthony, I think one thing Liberians have not done very well when it comes to the Unity Party is to give credit where credit is due. Because, Anthony, if you understand the requirements that the country must meet to attract foreign direct investment, at the time we attracted those concessions, Liberia did not have a stable electricity, no good road connectivity. No, there were so many things there. But people trusted the UP government and said because of they will go to Liberia to do business. I think that was a step in the right direction. Now, what I want to say to you is this. Don't forget that part of the requirements to qualify us for the debt waiver through the HIPEG initiative, which calls for accountability, transparency, the setting up of institutions. So how will we qualify for a debt, $4.5 billion debt waiver if those institutions we established were not credible? Now, all those concessions, as far as I'm concerned, let me give you something. I know I sent it to you one time. Did you read the Liberian oil agreement that I sent you that time?
Yes, I did.
Did you read it?
Yes, I
did.
And
what does it say? They said that agreement is one of the finest. It was as compared to that of the one that is in Norway, which gave us royalty right, ownership. So will you call us boogers? No. So one thing I would say to you, Mr. C, there is nothing that will be done in this world. Here in America, with the brand new Green Deal, there are people who oppose the Green Deal and say it is bad for America.
Right.
But people will always make the case. And let me say this on the issue of concession. I have no regret with those concessions we signed, because let me say this. We needed to attract investors. We needed to generate revenue. We took over a country with a budget of $80 million. Our people were struggling. Our intention was to create jobs to make sure that our people could be financially independent and create a stable environment for them. And so let me say this, not everything will always be perfect, but you can always continue to amend and make changes to yielding the overall result you want. For some of those concession agreements today, counties like Bond County, Nima, and many counties can boast of county social development fund. So what would you have said? Was that a bad thing? Some of those social development funds went towards creating jobs in those counties, created or invested in projects in those counties. So I'm not going to sit there and allow someone to say because one firm wrote an opinion on what they thought about because it didn't go the way they expected, that I would sit there and say everything was flawed. Now, if we hold your argument constant, let us not forget, every single person who is in government today, once upon a time, voted and signed for those concessions. So what are we saying? If they were bookers, you have Akara Gray in the legislature, you have Buffer Chimas in the legislature, Thomas Fala in the legislature. I can go on and on. You had George Weah at one point in time in the legislature. George Weah even voted for a bill to increase taxes on water. So what are you people telling us? So sometimes, Mr. C, we as general...
Who did pull forth that taxes you're talking about?
Hold on now.
But the party government.
Yeah, but listen now. Government has to generate revenue. Government has to look at other streams of generating revenue.
So the Unity Party felt the need that they needed to increase taxes on water.
At the end of the year, because you know why we made significant investment. Look, Anthony, when you take over a country with massive infrastructure deficit like we were, it's not cheap. We don't have money sitting out somewhere to think that we're just going to go take it and can't develop the country. We had to raise money on our own. And I think the best way to do it, as long as we were raising money and initiating projects that were going towards improving the life of our people, I support it. I have no problem with government raising taxes,
George,
but as long as the taxes go towards
increased taxes on water at the time, Liberia has just come from war.
But listen now. Let me no.
United Nations in
listen to the specifics of the
huge flow. Let me land, George. There were huge.
No, but you gotta listen to the specifics first. Listen to the specifics. The first thing, we secured the $257 million from the U.S. government. The bill which will increase taxes on water, meaning when the water plant would have been completed and water supply was across the country, it will be on their water bill. So it did not go into effect right away because we first and foremost had to run the pipe. There's no running water across the country.
Did the Unity Party complete
that project? No, the project is still ongoing. It hasn't been completed because it's still ongoing. You know that. The project is still ongoing. Don't you see the construction? The project is still ongoing. Water is coming to parts of Monrovia, so the water will move around, but the project is ongoing. So the goal of that bill was, when completed on your water bill, that is when the taxation will take effect, which means to bring in income, because you know water and sewer has to survive. We can't just have these entities. People will not always continue to show our responsibility. So we had to put in safety nets to make sure that the government cannot be a liability on people. And we need to depend on our own. That's one thing government must do. We need to be self-reliant and be fiscally disciplined. So I have no problem with that.
All right, George, let me progress. And this time, let's come to Mana Ellen Johnson Sirleaf as president then and VP Bwaka as vice president then. Let's come to their record. Are you proud of both Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and VP Bwaka's record, having served as president and vice president of Liberia, respectively, for 12 years? Are you proud of their record?
Absolutely, yes.
So are you proud of the fact that Mana Ellen Johnson Sirleaf had a budget around $15 million for the most part yearly, when we have United Nations helping with peacekeeping and providing security at the time? How can you justify such a huge budget?
When you use the word huge budget, first and foremost, Anthony, we must understand what were the line items in the budget. What was it for? So if you had the specifics of the budget, that would be fine. But let me say this to you, Anthony. We came from an $80 million budget to a $500+ million budget. Now, let us look at the President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, for example. Madam Salif, during her 12 years leadership, one thing she did for Liberia was to travel extensively. Many of those travels brought in more organizations and NGOs to Liberia. Many of those trips brought in a lot of funding for Liberia, a lot of grants to Liberia. So overall, let's look at the cost. If we did a cost analysis, a $15 million annual budget, given what we receive annually from Ellen's budget, I strongly believe that the good outweighs the bad. That investment, I'll make it any day. If I invest $15 million in a president who will travel to 6 countries and bring me $85 million, which means if I took off $15 million, it's a gain of $70 million. I do that investment any day. So yes, Ambassador Joseph Boyka was the vice president. He had an office budget of $1.9 million. Now, don't you also understand? The office of the vice president include the group of 77, which was receiving $444,000. But let's look at Ambassador Boyka's performance as vice president. He traveled to the United Nations to represent our country, went on multiple state visits. These things are not cheap. Security is terrible. It costs a lot. So extensive foreign travels. They were traveling to make the case for Liberia. And one thing you can't say, even with their budget, Liberia benefited tremendously from their budget. Take, for example, Ambassador Boyka in 2014, out of his office budget, came to the United Nations, addressed the UN, went to the White House, met with Barack Obama. What did we gain? 25 million with U.S. troops in Liberia during the height of Ebola. So what would you say? Was that a bad trade-off for a man for $1.9 million budget? Is that the argument? If it was the argument, so my point here, when you want to discuss this type of specific, you have to look at the trade-offs as well. Are you saying we were having problem with our economy? No, we were doing relatively very well, and we had the money to meet our budget. It could have been a problem if you said we were not investing.
I like that word. I like the word you just used, relatively well. So let's talk about how relatively well
let's go for it.
Was doing. I mean, how was the ordinary Liberian in my home county of Grand Crew doing at the time? How was Mambo, we are in Necro Town, selling code Danku was doing at the time? So if you want us to talk about relatively well, how were they doing relatively well? When in fact, at the end of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf 12 years, they said the Unity Party was not good to lead them anymore.
No, that was not what was said. It took Liberians like you and myself, some other people, who said nothing was done. Now, if you want to ask how they were doing, how well were they doing, Anthony, let me make one thing very clear for you. For a government that inherited a country massively destroyed with huge infrastructure deficit, the very first thing you have to do, a country that just came out of war, was to establish stability, was to ensure that you create institutions that will function. You see, Anthony, when you look at government performance and how well people were doing, we have to look at what was consumer spending, what was consumers' confidence, how many people were moved up in terms of stability. Anthony, I lived in Liberia throughout. I left Liberia December 27, 2006. When I was a young man in Liberia.
George, can you respond to my answer? Question.
Anthony, I can't. Let me finish. The people I'm speaking about are ordinary Liberians.
Okay.
I have friends who were ordinary people that during the UP 12 years, they had jobs with some kind of NGO. They were drivers for some kind of company. They were doing very well. If you want to make that case, we can open the phone, ask Liberians today, 12 years ago or 3 years ago, how were you doing as compared to where you are now? And that argument is very clear. If you ask that,
tell me about prices, because that is one of the indicators I can tell that.
In terms of prices, Anthony, in terms of prices, because I'm not on the ground, I will not give you the price of every basic commodity. That would be unfair for me to do that. Okay. But in terms of prices, let me finish now. Let me finish. For example, let me give you some basic prices. I know very well in 2018, January 22nd, when we gave the country to the CDC government, the exchange rate was $1 to $1.25. That is what I know. And not only that, I know that a carton of fish in January 2018 was $4,800. A gallon of gas was under $500. So if you want to discuss prices, I think you are a journalist who have all those data. I think what you should do now is to go back and ask and see where it is today. What was the cost of a bag of rice during the UP government, and what is it today? How many Liberians today, according to the IMF the other day, anywhere between 360,000 to 540,000 Liberians will go below the poverty line. What have been done to expand on the sectors? Businesses that came into Liberia during the Unity Party government have left, have closed down. NGOs that were in Liberia during the Unity Party government no longer exist. So when you talk about the ordinary man, first and foremost, when there are not enough opportunity for the ordinary man to be able to work and earn income, that tells you how difficult the country have gotten and it was before. And that
George,
is why.
George, stay on process. I'm sure you were in Liberia during Charles Taylor time. I hear that from you all the time. I was there also. During Charles Taylor time, we could get a cup of red for $10. But when Ellen came in, the hope was that at least she would have maintained it. Unfortunately, a cup of red jumped from $10 all the way to 20 and then $25 up to the time President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was leaving power. So when you say people were doing relatively well, I don't see how the price of a cup of rice jumping from 10 to 25 from Charles Taylor time to Ellen time can be considered as relatively well when it's going up. Please defend yourself
No,
there.
Anthony, Anthony, I will tell you today, I have friends who work in America here.
Mm-hmm.
My dad came to the States in 1981, 82.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who moved to Los Angeles in 1979 who tells me, he said, George, when I entered America in 1979, I used to rent an apartment downtown LA for 125 US dollars.
Okay.
I have a Liberian, let me finish, you spoke. I have a Liberian who lives in Newark, New Jersey, who told me, he said, George, when I came to America, I was here before President Lobbo was assassinated on April 12, 1980. He said, at that time, when you made $1, it was a lot. Now, what you have to understand,
Mm-hmm.
in every country, you make up the difference for inflation, which is normal. Now, let's look at prices. The reason why, if we want us to go back to Chancellor time, what was Chancellor's budget? The entire country averaged a budget of over not more than $53 million. That was Chancellor's budget. When you want to compare Chancellor's time with Liberia, over 70% of the country was in total disarray. The country was at war, so you have few people packed up in Monrovia. So we can't make comparison with that. But notwithstanding Anthony, let's look at what transpired after Chancellor. We had Judy Bryant. After Judy Bryant, what happened? What happened to the rate? What was the budget? The budget went from 80 million to 520 million, which means the government had more money, people were getting more money. So obviously, you have to make up the difference from the price. If you've been in America 10 years ago, people who came to America 6-7 years ago would tell you they used to buy a gallon of gas for $1.25. Today they buy gas for $2.30. So what are you saying? Is it because the people are suffering? Is that the analysis we're going to use? The fact, dear Anthony, when you want to this, let me finish. When you want to look at these type of things, right? You want to look at people's ability to earn income, because regardless of what with regards to prices, right? We expanded the budget. More Liberians opportunity were created for them during the Unity Party time. More Liberians could afford a better living than they have today. So my argument is, if your comparison is the Unity Party government, if we go before the Unity Party government, because you talk about Chancellor time, you know what I will tell you? Go and look at Akara Moses' great picture during Chancellor time. Go and look at Rufus Neva picture during Chancellor time, and see what they used to look like during and before that was Chancellor time before Ellen, and look at them what they look like during the Ellen time. There were individual librarians who never worked for government. See what they used to look like during Chancellor time. How many of them own homes? Young men of my age. During the Ellen time, they own homes and bought cars. The government responsibility, Anthony, is to create the condition that people will have the ability to work and earn income and feed for themselves and create a stable life or livelihood for them and their family. And that is what was done. So what I think you should be doing, a fair argument should be, Anthony, if we want to make a fair argument, is to compare where they were before and where they are now. That would be a fair argument to make for the Liberian people, and so the people will judge us based on the performance of the government they've had. That would be the fair thing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Lobbo. Folks in cyberspace, you are watching Focus on Liberia. My name is Anthony C. hosting, and this is the Hour of Politics. I am in an exclusive conversation with George Lobbo. Mr. Lobbo party was attacked, and he's yet to respond, and I'm doing what I always try to do, to push my guests so that they can come out and explain themselves better. Let go to some projects. Let go to some sectors. I mean, that's something that you like. I know earlier you were talking about health, but let me start with education. Somewhere I think the Unity Party was a dismal failure. In the words of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, I know some of you don't like for us to say this. She said the education system was a mess. Did the Unity Party do well? in terms of education in Liberia?
Anthony, it depends on what you what you define as well. Because during the Unity Party 12 years, I saw significant amount of investment being made to in the education system to
Okay.
improving it. I saw over 20% of our national budget being spent on social development, which included education. So if it depends on how you want to do it, because during the 12 years of the Unity Party, we saw enrollment across the country went up significantly. We saw the renovation and construction of over 200 new public schools. So we can go on and on. We saw the relocation of the Universal Laboratory to its final campus. We saw massive investment in MVTC. We saw the opening, the major decentralization of educational facilities, community colleges in counties that never had some. So if that is nothing to us and nothing was done to improving it, then who am I? What am I going to say? But as far as I'm concerned, I saw significant amount of effort being made to improving the education system, both from budgetary allotments that they were getting. We saw schools across the country. There were appropriations made for them in the national budget to support the educational system. Is that what it is today? I think that is a fair argument we should be able to make. If we want to go back to 2006 or 2005, let a fair argument be how many schools were there open? How many? The Universal Laboratory used to open one time every 2 years. So can we look at that today? Let's go. We can go across the country. So the fair argument to make. One thing when you want to look at the Unity Party government, what are you comparing them to? That's the very first thing we have not done. What government are you comparing them to? Are you comparing them to the present government who came to make it better than it was because it was worse or like you said? So can we look at what has been done, given what we give them? And let's see that. And let's make those type of comparison. That way will make the argument will be so fine. Because if we say we should go to Chancellor Town, I don't think it would be a fine argument because majority of the country was in war, so people were not even in school. Schools have been burned down. So that won't be a fair argument to make. We can't look at the Judy Bryan government, which I think was a transitional government. That won't be a fair analysis to make. If you want us to go back to another government, we can't go back as far as you want to go back. But let us compare. I think one of the problems we've had when we discuss the Unity Party government that makes it difficult for all of you and many Liberians, who are you comparing them to in the Republic of Liberia? I think when you do that, it will be easier to adjudicate the Unity Party government, and then the conversation will have a balanced and fair analysis. Compare the Unity Party performance.
And George, that's what we try to do here, looking at also the budget size, looking at also the cash flow in the Unity Party, the cash that was available, both grants, foreign direct investment, the government revenue generation, and all the resources of funding that the government had to its disposal. Looking at all those and looking at the deliverables, that is how we are comparing the Unity Party with both government before it and after it. But let's do this, George. Let's look at the fact as in corruption. That was another major thing in the Unity Party that the Unity Party has been on a serious criticism. How do you rate the Unity Party in terms of fighting corruption?
In terms of fighting corruption, I think the Unity Party, like I've always said, made tremendous amount of effort. Did we yield the intended results? I would say no. More should have been done. But I also don't want to discredit the efforts that were being made in the fight against corruption. That is not a fair assessment to make. We could have done more. A lot more needs to be done because corruption is a problem for the future of our country. So we need to be aggressive on tackling corruption. Now, when you talk about the Unity Party and her fight against corruption, Anthony, we must not forget, when we did a few days, we've been listening to assistant superintendents for fiscal affairs. We created systems to ensure financial discipline and promote accountability and transparency. Now, what do I mean by that? Part of the requirements that qualify for the MCC Compact grant, the $257 million, I think I will advise all Liberians to read that document, read what the requirements are, and see. If when you understand it and see how Liberia qualified in 2015, I think it will lead to bear most of these speculations and these wild claims. But let me come to the issue on our fight, Anthony. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sit there today and begin to list every single person that ever got dismissed. But I'll tell you one thing, Anthony. Madam Salih had one of the most tedious tasks ever in the history, given the country she inherited. There were so many different things that were wrong with the country. Ellen decided to tackle everything at once. Many people you will hear say when you come to power, just take one thing and focus on it. But Ellen didn't do that, because if Ellen had said I would just focus on road, 700 kilometers of road paved, I think it's a very good thing, but still was focused on the health sector, the educational sector, and every other sector of government. All our institutions were there. Now, Anthony, on the fight of corruption, I will leave you with two major names, and I want all Liberians to understand this. It is easy to sit down and speculate. It is easy to say nothing was done to fight corruption, but we must state the facts, Anthony. This is the only government, the Unity Party government, that the chairman of the ruling party was brought to court on allegations of corruption. Never had it happen in Liberia. It was during the Unity Party government that the head of the first branch of government, a certain speaker, was brought to court on allegations of corruption. We can list so many people some who even fled Liberia. But I'll say to you, Anthony, yet the intended results were not gained, but there were tremendous amount of effort made in fighting corruption.
George, I don't know how the intended results would not yield, and then you're talking about the war transmedials. I mean, it's a contradiction. But let's look at this, George. I heard Ellen saying upon taking over that corruption will be enemy number one. Almost at the end of her first term, her tone changed and started describing corruption as a vampire. That, in my opinion, is a failure in the fight against corruption. Now, nepotism was in Ellen Johnson Sirleaf administration, something I would like for you to speak to, but let me bring this to. There are officials in Ellen government. Brownie Samukai comes to mind, and he was never prosecuted. There were leaked audios, especially with the Annie Cochran case. And the corruption cases were documented, including the very Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the president herself, was recorded. Do you want to speak to that?
Let's be very clear. You said she was recorded. Recorded for what? So I can't speak to what was she recorded on.
So, George, if you don't want to speak to that, let me read something for you. At the LRA at the time, ghost employee phenomenon. Corrupt officials who add ghost employees to payroll and steal the excess. Then gas station. Corrupt officials were using the airport gas station to fuel their private gas stations and businesses. VIP Lodge. Corrupt officials were stealing by presenting fraudulent inventory vouchers and often colluding with Lebanese vendors. At the LRA, while officials there were taking 10,000 bonus a month home, employees at the LRA at the time were earning $54. This happened under the Unity Party government, and the Unity Party did not do anything about this.
Let me be very clear. What are you reading from? Instead of report?
Yes, it is a report.
Report done when?
This is the case involving the Liberian government, Ellen Crocker on one hand and George Johnson on the other hand. And this is something I'm going to share with you. And this is the side. This is the side of George Johnson. At some point, if you remember, George, the government of Liberia said it was trying to extradite George Johnson and Ellen Crocker, and the government never followed through on that. It was a charade.
Okay, let me. You see, it is good to clarify. So those are accusations being leveled by someone who is wanted by the government, right?
And the government would not pursue the case.
Anthony, you spoke. So someone who is wanted by the government to be prosecuted is the one who's writing about the government. I don't know how people will be working to LRA, One thing, answering some of these things we have said need to be factual on based on very simple using common sense. In Liberia, we know during the Ellen time, we did not see the level of protest for salary or being underpaid as it is today. So if people will be making $54, I find it hard to believe during the Ellen 12 years time, knowing what the least civil servant made during the Unity Party government. That number don't make no add up to me. But having said that, I give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe that was how he chose to respond based on the case that was against them. Let me finish on the issue of Ellen Croker. Ellen Kroger, you are aware, left Liberia and fled to the States. The Liberian government was trying all it can to be able to get her back to Liberia, which attempts failed. However, the recent government, the Popo government, through their efforts, Ellen Kroger came back, and as far as they're concerned, they dropped all charges against her. What led to that, I can't speak to that because I don't work in the government. I don't know what happened. But let me say something you asked me to speak to. About the issue of nepotism. I would say this to you, Anthony. Every government that comes to power, it's hard to defend nepotism because as long as someone who bears your last name is being appointed or is given a position in government, government have 22 ministries and so many different agencies. Even if it is one person, someone can say justified that was nepotism. But I'll say one thing to you when it comes to Ellen government uh, in terms of being more open and accommodating more Liberian to show a government that is balanced. I think the Unity Party demonstrated that. The Unity Party was one government that hired more opposition in key positions, and we showed that. On the issue of nepotism, yeah, if you ask me, or should Ellen have had her son in government, I would say no. But again, this is one argument we're going to have to be very conscious of how we proceed with it. Because I want to say this, Anthony. Uh, is the person qualified for the job, regardless of being relative? That's another thing we need to argue. I think we need to argue for a system that people must get jobs based on merit, not on families or connection background. That is my position on that. Would I have done what Ellen did, like to say, appoint her son to go to Noka? I wouldn't have done such a thing. Because for her other son who went to Central Bank, I learned he was there before she came in. That makes sense. But like the other guy I didn't former who was at NSA, who she appointed, I would not have done such a thing. So on that note, yeah, I think if I were Madam Salif, if I was advising her, I would not have supported her to do such a thing because given the fact that Liberia is one country with arguing on the issue of nepotism, you don't want to see people with your last name surfacing in government. I would not have done that. Yeah,
So,
that's my
so just to
position.
be clear, she had three sons in the government, in her government.
Yeah. I think Charles was at Central Bank before his man got there, and Fumba was at NSC, and then Robert was at Noka. Yeah. So I'm not going to lie on that.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Focus on Liberia. This is the Hour of Politics with me, Anthony C. I have Mr. George P. Lobbo as my guest, and he is responding to why accusation that was brought against Unity Party and the CPP by Alice Chuchu Jones. Mr. George Lobo is responding, and I'm trying to ask him some questions. And he has thrown out a challenge. He has thrown out a challenge, sorry, uh, to Alex Tutu Jones so that Mr. Jones can be able to come and then they can go into a debate. First in cyberspace, here I focus on Liberia. If you're looking at our live Facebook feed here, below we pin a link, and that link is the Drive Civic Education Project GoFundMe. We are asking for your voluntary contribution. You can go to the link below, click that, and make a contribution. The Drive is the platform that is being conducted by Mr. George Lobo, my guest, and he is planning to go to Liberia to conduct a civic education to educate our people on their rights, roles, and responsibility as responsible citizens, and the reason why they should vote for elected officials in our government. So, if you are here and you are in a position to make a contribution, Mr. Lobo, we appreciate it. And yeah, I focus on Liberia. We encourage you to make contribution to the effort that Mr. Lobo has embarked on. We will certainly Appreciate that. At this time, it is about time for you to get your calls coming in. The number is on the screen there is 605-313-6004. And don't forget to enter the code 791-403 and you will be given the opportunity to ask Mr. Lobbo a question. And so, Mr. Lobbo, while we are waiting for people to call in and ask you some questions, Chucho Jun also went at the CPP. And let me look at a few things for you to respond to. And I think by the time you are done, my callers will be in for you to answer their questions. The CPP, that is my assessment, failed miserably in terms of primaries. I want you to respond to that. Um, do you agree or disagree with me?
I disagree with you.
Why?
When you say the CPP failed miserably in terms of primaries, I think that assertion is wrong,
Tell me the
and it's
primaries
on.
that you had in all the counties.
Let me make one thing very clear with you, Mr. Sir. The CPP is a collaboration of four political parties,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so those four political parties they exhibited leadership. What do I mean by that? There were counties where they decided among the four of them that okay, in this county, if this person holds the best chance to win, then we go with this county. So the notion that whether we have primaries or not, but as long as we have our candidate that we are satisfied with, I don't see the big problem with that. It does not mean we have to. If there were contention, then we would have gone to primaries. If there were no contention and the other candidates and they all agree that okay, this candidate has the best chance, and the CPP leadership, I think we should give the CPP credit for the fact that they were able to show leadership on that. This is not something, or I know where everybody turned to run to was the issue that happened in Nima County, which was an incident we all regretted, we condemn it, it should not have happened, but it was misunderstanding. These things happen in political parties. So the notion that because there was an incident in Nima County, it have made the CPP to look terrible, it's falling, that is not true. Now, for example, like in Magibi, we know the CPP had an original arrangement. Each party in the CPP were given two counties, right? Those two counties, you brought up your candidate. They did that. Then the other counties, they said they would do their VPS. If not, after VPS, they would do primary. But it was depending on what the ability was, if the candidate wanted to contest. So if the leaders were able to gather those people together and say, man, listen, who poses the best possible scenario to win now? Let's throw our weight behind this person. I think that's something we should applaud them for. Did we see people going to court as a result of the CPP primary? How many other people did we see out there speaking out? We saw the CDC primary, for example, in Masurado. The CDC has a candidate who is Thomas Fala, but we saw Phil from the Ministry of Labor. We saw former Deputy Minister, says Jimama Wolokoli. We saw former party chairman Alberto by contesting. So I think we need to give the CPP some credit here. And this is unfair to say that they failed. Why they failed? Did we not fail our candidates? We failed our candidate. And I think that is what we're supposed to have done. We did
George,
just that.
my point is that decision or those decisions that you made are not democratic enough. I want to see all candidates with interest in any position in any district coming forth to have a debate, and that the constituents within those districts coming to vote for their choice. That did not happen. Why don't you give Liberia that so that you can show yourself as being a democratic institution?
Nah, listen. Political parties are structured differently.
Hello?
Uh,
Hold on, we'll get to you, caller. Hold on.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear
if
you, but hold
if
on.
if a candidate, let me say this, answering.
Mhm.
If there were two people interested in a job, and let's say we're scheduled to go for a job interview tomorrow, and
Mhm.
you shows up to the job and you tell the employer that you know what, I'm no longer interested in this job, I'm resigning, I'm leaving the race. Is that a problem? Is that a crime? I don't think this is a problem. You could have argued that the CPP didn't do it. How many persons do you know that wanted to contest in a county that was not already allotted to somebody? So, for example, I'll give you one scenario. Let's take, for example, in Bond County, right? Jeremiah Slunter had the intention to contest in Bond County. He comes from the ANC. The ANC were allotted Maryland and that of
Nimba.
Grand Cape Mount County, right? So the United Party was the one that was elected, born in Lofa. So I think if Snodder had been the smart of a politician, what he should have done was then join the Unity Party and then make the case that you want to contest in the Unity Party primary. The CPP could not conduct primary in Bonn because it was already been allotted to UP.
But George, he wanted to stay in his party because the playing field was not level to all constituents party within the framework. He had to leave and join the the ruling party, which was a manner for. But let me bring the caller in. We'll have more time. Patrick, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Where you joining
what
us
is the
from?
caller's name? I want to know the caller's name.
Yeah, I see his
the
name.
Caller's
Patrick.
name?
Yeah,
Patrick. Okay.
Patrick, your name. Give your full name,
yeah,
please.
I'm Patrick Joseph. I'm coming from Maryland.
All right.
I'm coming from Maryland.
All right.
Okay.
Now, as you are trying to analyze between Charles Taylor regime early and Dallas regime today, I mean, let us say Charles Taylor had the time. In the first place, the states were not free enough to go about the normal business in the rural area. That's why investor will not come in. Then two, the government was not interested in education at the time. So when Eddie came in, I hear her for one thing. I hear her she put education first, which is the bedrock of any nation for the outgrowth of the nation.
Okay.
She did her part and she did extremely well on that. She also put Liberia on the map of feminine of respect, not the others. And also she could not tackle corruption because she and her system which she put in a nepotism system. The reason why on the line of corruption, the citizen in the nation was front at that administration on the line of corruption. For our dear brother, when the time he got into power, he did not see any means or interest in education, any means in the interest of the well-being of the people, any means on wealth of the system in which to bring up some of the system for the benefit of the people and of the system of the country as well. Nothing. He only there for himself and those who are with him. So there's a reason why the system in Liberia, there's no system and there's no means of which to see things going off from. Besides that, if I'm still to be corrected, in reserve you have almost close to 150 million or more reserve in New York here. The brother has worked out everything. Then one more, there's far different between the two. Just because she had all downstream problem. We all know everyone won't have it. But for this, you cannot compare the two. You know with starter system as well. So this is the reason. But now the only way can help, as he said, he's going to help those. Let me just bring one point in, please. As he said, he's going to help for student education is very permanent and very good for that system. That's my thought. If you can educate the people of the right, the right of the country and the right of what to do for the country, that will help the country to go forward. But if all level for people to help to see how best it can happen. If you cannot help the people of that nation, the people don't know the importance of the right. They will not know the importance of what they do for themselves. That's my input. That's my input. Thank you very much.
All right. Does that mean you're going to contribute to the drive?
Say again?
Does that mean you're going to contribute to the civic education?
Yeah. This is the WhatsApp number. I'll send what I have to send there. I'll do so.
All right. Thank you so very much. Let me take my next caller. This person is joining me from the Twin City. Caller with phone number ending in 6478. Your name and where you joining us from?
Mr. Sophia, thanks for having me. My name is Samson Williams, calling from Brooklyn Center, Minnesota.
Oh, Mr.
Samson Williams.
Quickly to the issue. Any question for Mr. Lobbo?
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd just like to make a few maybe a comment for 30 seconds and then
Go ahead. You have a minute and a half. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Lobbo. Thanks for being on the show today. Even though yesterday your behavior towards my comments and you telling me you very educated than me did not make sense to me. But that doesn't matter. That's not why you're here. But I'm disappointed in you supporting the idea of nepotism. All right. If you are very educated as you claim, no politics as you claim, it is not about how many words we come on the media or social media, on a platform to speak. It's about the reality that we embrace, the things that are affecting the nation that we so claim to love and cherish. You cannot sit on this show. I gave 7 years of my young life to Ellie. I know how detrimental it was to students like Ansonis here from D12 Memorial High School and myself from D12 Memorial High School who did not have it to go to school. But yet and still, we strive for our education, travel in and out of Liberia, and at the end of the day, the lack of the Salese, which include the former, the Charles, and what have you, to take over government, not to talk of us having the privilege, one-time privilege, of realizing all in our country that we have transformed that economy for the best in the Monetary Union that was turned down, broken to pieces by corruption, all in the hands of Robert Saleh. And you are on this show telling us if a person is qualified, nepotism does not matter. Are you telling me you embrace Donald Trump having 10 children in the White House if you would want to do so? I'm disappointed. All right, let me tell you first thing about leadership. It's integrity. If you do not have the integrity to serve your people, you are not qualified to serve your people. You should not be serving your people. Lastly, on my time, let me speak to the issue of your intention to do civic education. If you may know, the year 2017, I'm the founder of the Liberians United for Future Empowerment Movement. I took two expatriates, American, one with PhD and one with double masters, to Liberia for 12 days. The president refused to see them to embrace civic education. And I can show you the records. I can show you the documents that were prepared when the like of the former Leopard boss, Brian made negotiation, every negotiation for us to have met with the president. We couldn't see the president at Hossus Market home. What happened in the end? Not 2000, what the president did. Ellie refused to see us to bring that transformation. She said election was closed. There wasn't a need. The people, and we wanted to do electoral education. All right? We are politicians. That's how we said it. That's how we do. We wanted a bunch of people in different ways. We didn't have to get on platform to credit that.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
We should embrace nepotism. Let me ask you one question. Are you sure, and do you agree with me, that it's questionable for us to believe that your intention to conduct this civic education is not based on partiality and confirmation bias, owing to the fact that you are a breed of giants, as you pronounce yourself, or profess to be, with the CPP? I found that to be biased. And if you answer my question, let us put them in the public schools and let's students learn them in the classroom. Go to other the rural counties. That should be what CPP should be focused on instead of your so-called protest that is your own strategy other than speaking words on social media. Thank you very much, Mr. C.
Thank you.
You want me to respond?
Yes, George, go ahead and respond. That was a lot. Go ahead and respond.
Yeah. So
hold on, let me put the number on. Oh yeah. All right, go ahead.
So first and foremost, let me begin by saying thanks to Patrick Joseph from Maryland.
Yeah.
Patrick made some brilliant points, and I want to say thank him for at least talking about what have happened, and he acknowledged some of the things I said. Let me get to Samson Williams. Samson Williams made a comment yesterday. Anthony, I want to be very, very clear. I have been very clear on the record. I am not educated. I'm trying to learn. And when people give me information, I want them to teach me the right way. As far as I'm concerned, if he wants to get versed, that's fine. Samson Williams wanted to quote me. I wrote a post yesterday. The context in which I wrote it, I was telling him, if you are going to quote me in that context, and a quotation must have a quotation mark. I don't have to be an English professor to know that. If that is what he's alluding to, that's fine. I can't speak to that. I just made that very clear. I have no problem with him disagreeing or claiming. I didn't claim to be a professor. I'm just saying, if you are going to be educating me and quoting me, because I know what Liberians do, quote me in that full context. You can get upset as much as you want to, that's fine. Let me get to something he said. You see, Anthony, some of the reason why you see many Liberians would turn to shy away from discussing a lot of national issues is because, one, people get very emotional, people are very situational, they get sentimental about the facts. You listened to me on the issue of nepotism. What was my response? Did I say I would have done it? Did I support Ellen doing it? I said no. Right? So
Yeah.
for people to call
But
you
then
again,
you
make
said,
this
you
next
said,
statement.
but and then you went and said that if they are
No, let me
qualified.
finish. So I said, no, hold on now. I know what I said. Because I'm saying to you, Anthony, in public policy, they say the law must not discriminate. So if he is a Liberian, this is where we need to be very, very clear with the laws. Because if you would discriminate against a Liberian based on family affiliation, that is wrong according to the law. So we can't have it our way. That is why I said, for me, I would not have done it. It is not something I would do, but just I would not have advised Ellen to do it. That does not mean I support it. I said if I was the one, I would not have done it. If I was advising Ellen, I would not have supported her to do it. So what must I say? I should stand here and yell and say, Ellen was not supposed to. Ellen did not. I can't do that, folks. If that's what you want for me to show that I'm against nepotism, then I'm sorry. I can't express myself that way. One thing I've come to understand, Anthony, I don't have to be combative to express myself. And people, Liberians need to understand, your views are your views. How you think is how you think. How you think does not mean that's how I should think. The way you express yourself is different from how I express myself, especially when it comes to national issues. People get vexed with me for a lot of different reasons. Someone got vexed with me the other day because I said, I believe everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty. And they said because I come from the opposition, I should say the government murdered those people. I can't do that. And let me be very clear here on something he said. Let me finish this. He said he took people to Liberia for civic education initiative. He said 2 professors, whatever their qualifications were. As far as I'm concerned, here's what I would say to you. In every country, there are rules that the country is governed by. If you took people to Liberia, I'm very sure you're not the very first. There are many Liberians here who went to Liberia to meet even President George Weah for whatever reason, because of scheduling, didn't meet the president. I can't make excuses for Ellen because I didn't work in Ellen's office. I didn't work in the Ellen government, so I won't speak to that. But I'll say this to you, Anthony. We Liberians need to understand. The other day I was speaking to a Liberian, Anthony, who was willing to invest. He and his partners from Dubai had JMB one that was willing to invest over $4 billion in Liberia tourism sector. But they said they had difficulties meeting with JMB. So what does that mean? Does that mean that JMB is bad, he's ruthless? I can't really say that. I don't know what happened. I don't know what negotiations you made before taking people from America to go meet somebody in Liberia. If like me, I'm going to Liberia. If I decided I wanted to meet with George Weah, maybe the most prudent thing to do now is to begin to establish that connection and book the appointment so that at the appointed time when I get there, I don't run into a situation where people say, oh, the person is busy, the person will do this. Because these people, they got their own schedule, and people around them sometimes might be giving you something that is not true. However, I understand where he's coming from, and I feel for him, because if you took people from here with genuine reason to go to Liberia to undertake such an initiative, I strongly believe that at least whatever channel he should have used, they should have been able to at least allow him and listen to what he had to bring to the table and at least hear from them, because he said it was a civic education initiative. I think the government or those involved should have really given him the platform to see the president. I don't know what happened. But I want to say that he asked me and said, Anthony, that because I come from the CPP, that my initiative, how sure can Liberians be that it's not for the CPP if it's not going to be biased? Let me be very frank with you, my dear friend and brother. If I wanted to go to Liberia to help the CPP, a long time ago, I would have been in Liberia campaigning for CPP candidates. Anthony, I think we need to start judging people, get our sentiments and our emotions out and stick to the facts. For the last 2 months, Anthony, when was the last time you saw George Lobbo on a talk show marketing a particular candidate that you can recall of?
Joe, you have not marketed any candidate, and the election has, elections
very well, because you know what?
I'm
just saying, I have made this commitment that I will go to Liberia to engage in civic education. The reason is simple. We want our people to vote right. And he didn't get the facts on why I'm going to Liberia. My civic education initiative is to go against Proposition 1 and Proposition 2. Right, so I have an objective.
More colors.
Yeah, so but I gotta speak to the issue. So that's the fact on it. Okay. So it is not about what you think. My being in Liberia is for a specific reason, and I'm going to Liberia to take care of that.
All right. It's Ben Jonah, my own twin-sided man. Welcome to Focus on Liberia. Quickly to the issue.
The Ben Jonah.
Yeah. Oh, it seems to be I have not done something that I needed to do for him to be able to speak. Hold on, Joe. Hold on, Jonah. All right, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh yeah, so my name is Ben. I have seen the short questions that will entail the yes or no from our brother in the studio there.
George does not
So
answer
my
yes or
first
no
question has
question.
Let him answer the question. Let the man speak, man. Anthony, get a guy chance. Ben, go ahead, yeah. Don't let Anthony take your time.
yeah.
Go ahead, my dear brother.
So my first question is does the does the CPP have framework as of now, because there was one that they should have work on. Do they
Okay.
have one now?
Okay. I don't, you see, Ben, I can't lie to you. Since the CPP took that
Okay.
framework back and they said they were making changes on it, I have not seen the final document. So I won't say yeah. I won't say no for right now.
Okay. So then so here is my concern. My concern about the CPP is that the CPP seems to look broke. They don't seem to have finances, because when you see how well the CDC are outspending them. Because when I look in the document, there is something that on section 8.21 where it talks about finances, and it said each of the four parties will pay $10,000, which meant that the CPP was had it needs a budget of $40,000 in the account. Is that amount of money in the CPP account? Do you have any idea if that money is there?
All right. Thank you, Jonah. If that is your question, thank you. Let me take the other caller
And
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 George will
then as I
respond.
said, then so the last one here is that there were also a monthly due for each of those four parties. Are they paying the dues as well? Thank you very much.
Very good question, Jonah.
Very
Thank
good
you.
question.
I appreciate that. And George, talking about the
Uh,
CPP framework, or in the framework, it said that you must be active, new, and visible. Are you active, new, and visible?
The Unity Party is known, active, and visible, and as a result, I come from the Unity Party.
All
So we
right.
are visible.
All right. Let's take your prospective debate challenger, Mr. Ellis Chuchu Jones. Mr. Chuchu Jones, welcome to the Hour of Politics. Quickly to the issue.
Thank you very much, Asone. It's a pleasure to pose a few questions to Mr. Lobbo. First of all, I accept his debate or debate for any of the Unity Party representatives, CPP representatives, COP, whatever, at any time, any day, because I think they're doing a disservice to the Liberian people. My question, I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Lobbo. The first question here is Mr. Boycott seems to be the presumed candidate of the Unity Party. I would like Mr. Lobbo to first tell us how long has this man been the presumed candidate, and what process or processes was done to ensure that the Unity Party elect the center bearer in a democratic fashion, open to every Liberian to participate. The second question I have for Mr. Lobbo is that the framework that was publicized, the CPP said that it was an error, that they sent the wrong document. When will this document be released to the public? A date and a time. As you know, it's been over 3 months. And we expect a party that wants to represent Liberia and be a formidable organization to be responsible and to be truthful. And my last question for Mr. Lobbo is, he claims to be the bucketball of the Unity Party. Why none of the Unity Party senior representative or Mr. Boyka has appeared on this program or any of the programs in the diaspora that every other individuals involved in Liberia discussion appears on? Is he incompetent to be able to face questions from the Liberian people of whom he wants to govern? Those are my 3 questions, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Lobbo, you got your hands full there. Go quickly into those questions.
All right. Let me.
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Okay, let me get to Ben. I want to say thank you very much for Ben's statements. And also Ben raised a point about he asked on the issue of the CPP account, given the original framework which talk about 10,000 per member. So he asked if there's 40,000 in the account. Ben, I will not lie to you. Let me be very, very clear, Anthony. I am not a spokesman of the CPP. I happen to be a member of the CPP by way of the Unity Party. The Unity Party does have representation at the CPP. So on specific information like that, the most prudent thing to do is for me to check on it and give that back to you. As we also know, we agree that the framework was pulled back. So let me check on that. I don't want to lie to you. He also talks about membership due. That is important. If they are going to go anywhere, there's a need for the CPP to raise funds. He talked about what are they doing with the CDC is outspending them. I am not on the strategic team in regards to the CPP, so I don't know what the strategy is for this pending election and for future election. But as far as I'm concerned, I know that the CPP is focused on making sure that it gets its house in order. One thing we're focused about was our candidates. We now have them. The different parties are doing different things for their candidates, but the CPP as a whole, I spoke to some people who said they are engaged in a massive campaign for them, or they're moving people based on needs. So I won't speculate on that. That's all I can say to you, my dear Ben. I really wish I had more to tell you. Let me get to Alex Jones. Mr. Jones said Boakai seems to be the presumed nominee. And so once again, Mr. Jones, I will say this to you very clear. You're being hypothetical. That's what you think. But as far as I'm concerned, JMB was our standard bearer. The Unity Party will go to a convention before the election, and at that convention, we intend to elect a standard bearer for the Unity Party. And that is what will happen. If you want to know how he got elected, he was elected at our convention in Banga. That is how he got elected as a standard bearer. And we intend to do something like that. The Unity Party had initially planned a bigger convention in Banga again, but as a result of the COVID, they had to do a mini election, a mini convention, which brought Chairman Ami Moda to power and Mo Ali as our Secretary General. So that is where we are. And that leadership knows they are there for a term reference, and we will have a convention before the election and the Unity Party. So if you got plans to contest again, join the Unity Party, you can contest against Ambassador Boakai when the time comes. We would make that decision. So if you can make the case better, we'll be fine for that. Let me get to something Mr. Jones asked. He talked about the process of ensuring that the democracy is fair. So that's why I just spoke to that. We'll have an election, we'll go to a convention, and that way we elect our standard bearer. So that's one. He also said, when will the document or the CPP final document be released? And let me be very clear on this today. I want to speak as a Liberian. Here's what I think. People don't give the CPP more credit than it deserves. The CDC formed a coalition in less than 24 months with no documentation, with no framework. Went to an election and won the election. The CPP didn't do something like that. The CPP decided that despite of our differences, we will come together. I think it was fair and prudent enough for Liberians to give the CPP some time. Let the people, let me finish.
George, what time you got asking for? You told the Liberians, you go, no, I'm going to hold you here, George.
Let me finish now,
Anthony. Promised the Liberians it was a mistake and that you
can't interrupt me. Let me finish my statement.
Okay, go ahead, George.
So here's what I'm saying to you. The CPP will present its framework. And let's get something very clear. The framework document that you people want is for the four political party. It is the document that bind them together. What Liberians should really be concerned about is the CPP agenda to win an election. The document that bind the four political parties, it does not affect CDC. It does not affect
shouldn't
let me
Liberians
finish.
care
Let me
about
finish.
the alternative?
Oh, let me finish. You can, but I'm saying that the parties, it is documentation that bound those parties. When they come together, the major concern will be the agenda that will run for the country. And what I'm saying is, Anthony, here's what needs to happen. Everybody wants the CPP to put up something. Then tomorrow you come back and say, oh, they did this. Let the people sort out what needs to be sorted out and let them do it the right way.
At least you guys need to give us update, George. We
What-
need to know. There are
What you call we
Liberians
need?
who want to join the CPP and they want to look at the framework to see if it's
Mr.
something that they can stand by.
Mr. C, I think you Liberian people are doing just way too much.
No, we are not asking for too much,
Listen,
George.
we are in
This is what
2020.
Liberians failed
Let me
to do in
finish.
the past by not holding people accountable before coming to
The
power.
election.
And then it's
Listen.
too late.
So what happens today? Let me give you an instance.
Okay.
What happens today? A Liberty Party goes to a convention, for example, and they get a new chairman, and the chairman say, "I don't think the party should even be in the CPP." You understand? That's
understandable, but you have a framework.
So my point is,
Show it
here's
to the
my
Liberian
point.
people.
So here's my point here. My point is simple. The CPP documentation or final framework or final document will be the document that binds us together, which our leaders are committed to. I will say this to all Liberians: bear patient. The people came together last year.
That
Give
sounds
them
like
some
Joe, we are
time.
telling the Liberian people to bear patient, but
Yeah, but up to
bidding
them, that's
condominiums.
different. So that's different. So I would just say this, Mr. Jones, you definitely will get it when it's available. I personally will send you a copy as a friend and brother. He asked a question: why is it that members of the Unity Party don't appear on other talk show back and forth?
Yeah, specifically
Mr.
the
Jones,
leadership, he said. I don't remember
yeah,
the
but
last time Mo Ali was on any platform
that is not true.
based in the US and answering questions.
No, that is not true. Mo Ali did appear on Spoon TV a while back ago. So that is not true. Let me say this to you very clear. Let me say this very clear. Very
we have invited Mo Ali and your current chairman. We have been making effort. He will not even respond.
Let me say this very clear. Let me make this very clear to you. Very, very clear to you. They have not committed a crime. They will, as long as the right arrangements has been done. Ambassador Boyka has engagements, and Ambassador Boyka is not someone who will shy away from debate. And I think, Mr. Jones, sometimes you get really, really emotional when you make some statements and talk about they are incompetent. They are not incompetent, Mr. Jones. The man who was vice president for 12 good years, the man who was the LPRC managing director, I think that's some level of disrespect to him. And I think we need to be careful how we address people, regardless of our disagreement with them. You can't look at a JMB and say he's incompetent. The man who went to the debate and debated Alexander Cummings, Benedict Ayure, and so many other people were seeking the presidency. The man who addressed the United Nations General Assembly and went to Washington, D.C. and met with Barack Obama, you don't call him incompetent. That is disrespect to him. And let me say this once very clear. Mr. C, I wanted to have a debate with Ellis Jones. I cut it off. There will be no debate. Whatever Mr. Jones has to say, I wish him all the best. We can't proceed like this as a country. That's not going to happen. We need to express our disagreements in the most respectful manner. I don't agree with everything Mr. Jones say a lot of times, but this notion of always insinuating and attacking people, we can't continue to build a country like that. So I want to be very clear. If there was any debate, I cut it off. I want to make that very clear before I leave. All
right. We respect your decision on that. Mr. Lobbo, our time is fast spent. So finally, I will give you the opportunity to speak on the Drive Civic Education Program. The link is being pinned, and speak to my audience. Seeking their contribution. You can go ahead and do that.
First and foremost, Mr. C, I want to say thank you very much for the opportunity. I want to thank Focus on Liberia for the job you people do, for asking some of the most difficult questions and holding people accountable. I appreciate that greatly. To my fellow Liberians, here is why we launched the Civic Education Initiative first and foremost. Proposition 1 is dual citizenship with restrictions. Proposition 2 is to grant President George Weah 2 5-year term. If you believe that George Weah have not done what it takes to lead Liberia beyond 2023, we do not need to create a condition where George Weah think that he has a chance to run 2 5-year term. So that's proposition 2. If you are a Liberian that live in the diaspora, you pick up citizenship in the country where you live today. Whatever the circumstances when you left Liberia, you know how you left Liberia. I want to say to you, it is very, very important that we come together uh, to make the case to our people back home. Our brothers and sisters on the ground don't understand what they've been using to frame us as national security risks to Liberia or threat to the country. On the issue of the citizenship you've picked up abroad, I think is wrong, it's discriminatory, and as a result of that, some of us have said we need to speak to our people on the ground one-on-one and tell them the enormous amount of sacrifices and contribution you are making to the country and why you people should not be restricted. There should be no dual citizenship with restriction. That is my position. And that is why we launched a civic education initiative. But for us to go across the country, we'll take all of you guys' contribution and the GoFundMe link that has been pinged below by Anthony. That is what is geared towards. That is our intention, is to go and talk to our people one-on-one and tell them that your brothers and sisters that live abroad, some of them have struggled to get the status they have today, and some of the jobs they now have is on the basis of the status they have. We can't make that argument from being here all the time. We need to go on the ground and talk to our people one-on-one. And I want to say thanks to all of you. There are many of you who have given and have not. I want to say those who've made commitment and made promises to us, I want to thank you very much for your little contributions. Every little contribution will take us a long way. We intend to go to all 15 counties, but as you know, the dry season just started recently, and many Liberians, many people, car or dealers that I talk to, car renters I talk to in Liberia, they are concerned about the bar road conditions. So we are making arrangements to see how best we can go reach as many counties as possible. But for that to happen, it will take your contribution and your support. I want to say thank you. Thank you, Mr. C, once again for bringing forward our link and talking about our project. It's always a pleasure to be here.
George, I know we have to go, but this project is an ambitious project, and second of all, the issue of security. Auditors, 4 of them died, George, and
I knew you would not leave with this.
you are going into this terrain. You're talking about 15 counties. How do you get to my county of Grand Cru that has enormous challenges when it comes to the road? I don't know. I don't intend to discourage your contributors because myself going to contribute today. But George, if you can make arrangement with the radio stations in Liberia, you organize the program and you pay them the money the people contributing for those things to be aired, it should be done. There are radio stations in all the counties. I'm not discouraging you, but I'm just concerned. Your take.
Anthony is a very, very good question. At some point in time in life, Anthony, as a leader or a potential future leader, whatever, one must learn to face in your fear.
Okay.
For the people's sake, at some point in time, you must leave your comfort home and go and facing the challenge hands on. Security is of a major concern. But I want to say one thing to you today. I know there's very little I can give you as it relates to security, but a lot have been done. Anthony, I can assure you today, a lot have been put in place since I decided that I will go to Liberia. A lot of things have been moved. I can tell you today, Anthony, if I was to arrive in Grand Cru today, I will be protected for the time of being Grand Cru until I leave Grand Cru. The security details have been organized in such a way that every county that I will enter will pick with the county. There will be security provided in the county that I'm there for, wherever county. Not only that, Anthony, right now, given what I've been told and what I've been advised from a lot of my security team is that I will have to, I'm working on cutting down my security because the security detail I have for Witty Monrovia was just too much. And there are a lot of different things doing. I know if you notice, I try to keep the party out of my being in Liberia. But don't forget as well, I'm an executive of the former ruling party, which remains one of the most forceful party on the ground. So my party now is, let me tell you, my party people are complaining that, no, you're not, even though you come into Liberia and say you're going to do civic education, you are a member of our party, you are an executive of the party, and it's our responsibility while you're in this country to ensure that you are safe and whatever happens to you happens to our party. So I would say this, Anthony. The only thing I ask all Liberians, that those of you who are concerned about my security and safety, in Liberia, everything is expensive. That's one thing I've come to realize these few days, Anthony. Everything is expensive. You want me to go to your home in Grand Crew, you will not believe the cost. Anthony, you know, in America, when we rent cars, right, you can rent a car in Minnesota, you can drive it across the country.
Right.
If that $15 per day is $15 per day. Mm-hmm. In Liberia, when you want to rent a car in Monrovia, the price for staying in Monrovia is different. Mm-hmm. As long as you get outside of Monrovia, you could look at the price between $175 to $250 per day. Now, when we talk about security, accommodation, lodging, moving around, those things cost a lot. So we set up this GoFundMe initiative to be able to honor the cost. Anthony, I'll tell you, this going August 8th, my party wanted me to go represent it if the convention had held on. The party was going to sponsor my trip to Liberia. I have not even gotten my party involved. I have asked any member of the Unity Party. I have not talked about it in the executive meetings. No, not at all. But I say this to you, Anthony. Most of the funds intend to go to making sure that I'm secure and I'm safe in Liberia. I know it is a concern. One thing I will tell you, Anthony, I have taken a lot of different steps that will ensure that I'm safe in Liberia. And I will do the best I can. Once our Liberian people contribute to our efforts and support this project, you can be assured that we definitely will go to Liberia, we'll leave Liberia safe and sound. I will return to Liberia as a Liberian, and I will leave as a Liberian. That's
finally,
my
accountability. Every dime contributed, can you assure our listeners here that will be used for the intended purpose?
Mr. Sear, I think the records should speak for themselves. We raised $4,000 plus to provide rice in 3 different counties: Bon, Nimba, and Magibi. And I think the records speak. We were the only group that raised money during the COVID era who presented the Liberian people a comprehensive report. And I think GoFundMe does have something that if you raise money, you also have to account for that money some type of way. So we will definitely ensure that happens, Mr. Sear. Trust me, we know what it is. Our reputation is on the line. Our character is on the line. This is why we are making it very clear. We'll go as far as our resources will take us. On the issue of the radio station you spoke of, Mr. Sear, what we have decided to do that is that counties where we can reach. Is it possible to reach to the nearest county that has a radio station that covers that whole area? And we can organize program. Based on the resources we have, Mr. Sear, we'll begin to kind of put together a plan. That is why you see some of us, we are very, very early. You know me. Today I call you 9 minutes before the show, Mr. Sear, this and this and that. That's why when I'm even late, you say, that is not George, that I know you don't. So I'm telling people that based on what we get, we'll do what we can. But I can assure every single Liberian that every single dime that will be given to this initiative will be spent on ensuring that we will reach as many Liberians as possible so that we can get the worth out of our money. Because this is something I'm passionate about, and you know where I stand on dual citizenship. An attack on dual citizenship for me is an attack to me personally. And that has been my position, and it's not going to change. And this is why we must take the fight to Liberia. And that is what I say.
George, Preston, Lobbo, that would do it. So Liberians are in despair. Our government is struggling economically. And then the security concern in the country is in the roof. Liberians are in fear. You are an emerging leader in our country. Let us speak to people when they are in despair, to tell them that though it may be gloomy now, but hope is on the way. George Lobbo, your time. Speak to your people.
Let me say to every one of you, both home and abroad, that these are difficult times in our country history. We know what you're going through: high inflation, increasing hardship, insecurity in the country. There's no rule of law, a compromised justice system. Despite of these circumstances, Liberians have shown their resilience to prevail. In our Lone Star Forever, it said we will overall prevail. We've gone through a lot. This is not the first. I know every single one of you ask yourself, when will it end? Culture said, and I quote, he said, when will this slavery end? And I know every single Liberian asks themselves, when will this end? When do we get a government that put the interests of us first? When will we get a government that prioritizes the needs of its people first? When are we going to elect leaders that will stand for us? These answers or these questions will not be answered now. We have a government that have shown complete disregard for the plight of our people. It's a government that have shown no interest in investing in improving the living standard of our people. Despite of its efforts, all we ask and all the Liberians have asked always is a chance to do better. So I know what you're going through. And as a young man, I've been through those same old struggle. I've walked home from school before. I've come home from school and no food to eat. I had to go down Jalasan for 2 5-gallon container, take shower outside at 6 a.m. because I could not take shower in the inside bathroom. I know exactly how it feels. I have made those same choices you had to make, whether to pay $10 from grocery to bypass or to go eat. I've done all of that. But I say to you all, despite of this, never lose hope. Remain resilient. To you, the young people, we are majority enough to constitute a government, but we can only do it when we put aside our differences and come together under one umbrella, forgetting about our emotions and our sentiments. Let us lead. Let us be able to say, it might not be great today, but tomorrow it will be better. On this note, I want to say to all of you, thank you very much. Stay strong. One of these days, we will be able to change our country around. Thank you, and God bless you. And thank you very much, Mr. C, for the opportunity. It's a pleasure being here today.
George, thank you. And those in cyberspace, loving close with this. And it was written by the CEO of Focus on Liberia, Dennis Baku Kenjuja.
Oh, you got Bakuni.
Yeah, the man is Baku Kenju. And I will tell you what that means in the next show when you come here.
Okay.
He wrote this on the 11th of May, the month I was born in 2017.
One day after my birthday.
Yes. And he titled this one, Presidential Attack Dogs on Lynch. They are everywhere, anytime, running, roaming, barking, and biting. Some don't carry the presidential insignia. Be not fooled by their plain clothes, he writes. They are trying out, locking for a slot. Feed their pains, empathize with their delirium. Unless they bark and bite indiscriminately, they may never get there in time. In the company of the new waggies, the others, fully armored and fair for that purpose, roll with their prime mission, defend, defend, and defend. Seek no logic or common sense in their onslaught. Black, they may call white. White, black, night, they may call day. It only makes business sense, at least for now, to keep their power balling that way. And that's the way they know how. So beware, Danny just right? Presidential attack dogs are on the rampage. On that note, folks, in cyberspace and here at Focus on Liberia, this is how we'll come to the end of this broadcast. I'm Anthony C. I brought you the hour of politics with my man George Lobbo as my guest. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to contribute to the Drive Civic Education Program. Thank you and bye-bye. George, that will do it for us.
Thank you very much. And thanks to you, fellow Liberians.